来对通信，我觉得通信哥是最好的。我觉得听这个好累，差的你妈都不让我看。
Okay, good people, you ready to go? Ready? Okay.
Are you ready?
Are you ready is my question. All right. Here we go. Almost. All right, here we go. Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Thursday. It's kind of an overcast, rainy day. It is freezing in this room for some reason. I apologize. I think I may send an email and try to get it sorted out, because is everyone else cold? Or is it just me?
Just because you went on a walk.
Because what?
Because you went for a walk.
Because I went for a walk? Well, no, I should be warmer from my walk, shouldn't I?
Global warming.
It's global warming? Okay. I'll talk to Brenda. Maybe she can fix global warming for us. Okay, so let's jump into what we were talking about yesterday. We were talking about, well, quite a number of things, right? We had introduced this idea of fascism, which will be very important for at least the first half of the 20th century. And we said that it was kind of a governmental system that emerges as a reaction to democracy. And so we'll dig into this a little more with Germany very shortly. But it's a time where democracies aren't working very well, okay? And they're not working very well kind of for two reasons. So remember at the end of World War I when we looked at the map of, you know, how the borders of Europe were all redrawn? Remember that? Okay. So we get all these brand new countries that never existed before, and they're given democratic governments because that's kind of who won the war, right? Was the democracies won the war. And so they all get new democratic governments. Nobody's quite sure how this democracy thing works. They've never had it before, so it's their kind of first try at it. And there's lots of different political parties. Now, that's kind of a problem because when you have a parliament, I think I need more eyes up here. I think I need way more eyes up here because it's difficult to talk to people who are not looking at you. Right, Ben? So, Jim, are you with me? Okay. So, when you're in a democracy, when you're in a parliament and you vote, you usually need 50% of the vote, right? You know how that works? Yeah. So, you need 50%, but the problem is that if you have a bunch of little political parties that are in that legislature, it's hard to get that 50% because they don't vote all the same. And if you don't get that 50%, what you wind up happening is that nothing gets passed, right? Nobody can do anything because every vote fails. And so this is kind of what's happening in this early part of the 20th century in a lot of these new countries, is that people aren't really used to democracy, but there's lots of small political parties and not a lot gets done, right? There's lots of arguing, there's lots of debating, and then they vote and it doesn't pass. And then they've got to try it again, and there's lots of arguing, and then it doesn't pass. And so the public is looking at this, and they're like, what is the point of this government system? Nothing gets done, right? Meanwhile, we have high unemployment and all kinds of chaos to deal with, and the government is just arguing and not getting anything done. And so along come fascists, right? Fascists are action-oriented. They are going to do something, right? They're not going to tell you what they're going to do because they don't have much of a plan. They'll figure it out as they go, but they're going to do something, right? And they do, right? And so we see this political system evolve where you have a strong, charismatic leader with a vision for the future, and he, takes control of the democracy, suspends, democratic activity, limits people's rights, and sort of puts the state and the nation first, right? And so we'll see all kinds of things, with fascists in terms of very strong nationalism. We'll see them use violence and war to kind of unite people, but also to punish any enemies of the state, and enemies of the state are whoever the fascists think are the enemy of the state. And again, a strong kind of opposition to anything democratic, anything liberal, anything sort of decadent or luxurious. The fascists will kind of oppose all of those things. So we learned a little bit about this guy on the left, Benito Mussolini, who's kind of one of the first fascists to appear in Italy. We'll hear a little bit later about Francisco Franco, who is in Spain, and of course Adolf Hitler, who is impossible to not talk about in the history of the 20th century. But Benito here, at least to some, drew some comparisons to Donald Trump, right? And again, they had some similarities. They were both kind of, very charismatic speakers. They both kind of, like to get up on stage and rouse people up and get them excited about things. But neither had a very strong political ideology. They kind of just made things up as they went. And they also had the idea that, that either them or their country was somehow wronged, right? Somebody did them or their country wrong in the past, and they were going to get revenge, right? And Donald Trump is very much like this. I think we saw, right? If anyone said anything bad about him, he would be all over you, right? Tweeting up a storm about how your paper was failing or about how you're a horrible person or whatever, right? So the question was, is he a fascist? And so I supplied you with 2 articles that took opposing positions. Yes, he is a fascist. No, he is not. And so I asked you to get into pairs, determine the arguments, determine if they were logically sound, and then come to some kind of a conclusion. Okay? So in terms of percent done, that process, how many percent done are we? What's that? Yeah, like if this is the job that has to be done, how many are you? 50% done? Are you 80% done? 30% done? 30? Okay. Guys? I'm not going to hold you to it. It's just an estimate. 50, 60? Okay. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put some time on the clock here. I'm going to put 13 minutes because it seems like that's enough time. Put together the rest of your arguments as best you can. We will discuss it, and then I will assign number 4 as a homework question, okay? And so let's try and be ready in 13 minutes to talk about this and figure out whether he is indeed a fascist or not, okay? Okay, go to it. So, again, as you can see by my handwriting, this is why I don't write on the board more often, because it's difficult to read. That's why I type everything out. But it'll be okay for this time. So, we've got two arguments before us, right? One of them, we kind of said, is, yeah, that Donald Trump is a fascist, right? That's the conclusion of one of the arguments. The conclusion of the other one is that, in fact, no, he is not a fascist, right? But the question is why should we believe one or the other or either of those things, right? So the authors here have to give us good reasons for us to believe what they want us to believe. So let's start with Donald Trump is a fascist. Why should we believe that? What's one of the premises? Okay, so he's not he's kind of his treatment of immigrants and people who are showing up at the borders is not very nice, right? They're getting put in camps and things like that. So let me just see. I just want to check my notes here. Let me just check my notes. Okay, so that treatment of immigrants and the camps, those are kind of fascist-y things to do, right? So let's do that. Let's call it this. Policies are I'm going to say fascist-y. That's not a real word, but I'm just going to make it up for today. So he's got some policies that are fascist-y, right? He's got the camps are in there, right? What else? What are the things that he doing that are kind of fascist-y?
Wall.
Oh, right, the wall. What else? He has what? Oh yeah, right. He attacks the media, right?
In general,
Yeah. And most fascists would just take the media over so that they can use it to their own ends. But yes. Okay, so he's got policies that are kind of fascist-y, right? So he's got camps going on and walls. He attacks the media. He's kind of racist, right? Which sometimes fascists are. What else? What's another reason why we should believe that Trump is a fascist? Sorry, say that one more time. Right. So he's okay. So that's I think. Let me just look at my notes again. Yeah. So he called Mexicans rapists. That's not nice. What else did he kind of do in that regard? Yeah, he publicly mocked disabled people, right? So what's he kind of doing here? Starts with a B. Yeah, yes, yes, but there's another word that the author uses here. Trump is a
bully.
He's a bully, right? So Donald Trump is a bully, and the author says that fascists are bullies, right? Fascists are bullies. They push people around, right? They tell people what to do. They use violence if those people don't do what they're told, right? And Trump is that, right? He will use as much power as he has to get his way. He doesn't really care who he steps on in the process, right? It doesn't matter if those people are disabled or if they're immigrants just trying to look for a better life, or if they're football players trying to call attention to injustice against Black Americans. Doesn't matter who it is, he'll bully you, right? He's happy to do that. Third thing. Oh yeah. There you go. Oh, nice work. Yeah, he undermines democracy. How does he do that? What's that? He tweets? What kind of things does he tweet?
That's the judge, the law. I don't know who they execute.
Yeah, well, he interfered with the kind of criminal justice system, right? He was pardoning all of his cronies, right? He was trying to interfere in investigations and trials, which you're not allowed to do. Maybe not mentioned by the article because the article is older than this, but what did he do even more recently to undermine democracy?
Storming the Capitol.
Yeah, he encouraged his supporters to storm the Capitol. And what were they going to do there? Or why were they storming it?
To show that they were unhappy with the results of the votes.
To show that they were unhappy with the votes, with the election. What else did he say about the election?
It was rigged.
It was rigged, right? It was all a fraud. And when those people stormed the Capitol, what were they doing inside? What were the government representatives doing? Do you remember that one? That point? Oh, well, yeah, the protesters were. But what was the Congress doing in there on that day? They had a meeting, yeah, important meeting. Yeah, but they were there. Congress and the Senate were there to confirm the results of the election, right? So the election is all the votes are counted up, everyone reports in, and then the results come before Congress. They're read out, and then Congress approves them, right? So that's what was happening. They were kind of like signing off on the election, and Trump's supporters stormed because they thought that he should have won. Right? So, yeah, he undermined democracy in just about everything that he did, right? And I think the author said it's as if he's trying to melt it from the inside out, right? And I think that's true. I think he did a lot of damage, right? It's not just him, right? It wasn't just him, but he did a lot of damage to democracy. And fascists do the same thing, right? They will take away your democracy. Remember when we read about Mussolini, and you remember the votes at the end where they just gave you like a list of all of the fascist party people, and you got to vote yes, and that's it. It's not an election, right? It's not democracy. So yeah, fascists will kind of come through your democracy, and then they'll destroy it from the inside out, right? They will take it away. And Trump attempted to do that. He didn't succeed yet. He didn't succeed, but he tried to do it. So I think here we have a reasonable argument. Now we'll come back to, we'll analyze this in a minute, but let's go on to the second one. The conclusion of the second article is no, in fact, he is not a fascist. Now, this one's a little trickier, but let's see what we can come up with. Why should we believe that Trump is not a fascist? Because what? Oh, okay. So one of the things the author says is that, well, he's kind of like contained by democracy, right? He can't really do what Mussolini or Hitler did, right? Those guys had total power over their countries, and they just did whatever they wanted. Trump probably would have liked to, but he wasn't allowed to, right? Fortunately, the sort of democratic structure of the United States was strong enough that he couldn't break it, right? Yet. So,
maybe one more thing.
Maybe, right? So, I'm going to say that he is contained by democracy. Right? He's not able to really act like a fascist dictator because The United States Constitution and its institutions are strong enough to keep him from doing that. Give me another one. Why is he not a fascist? Why is he not a fascist? What does the author say is the first thing that fascists do, usually?
Genocide.
Not always. Sometimes they do. One of the more famous ones did.
If you want to be fascist, you need to be smart first.
Fair. He is not smart, but I'm not sure how smart Mussolini was either.
He was new.
That's possible. Another similarity between the two. But what do fascists do as soon as they get some power?
Boast the power, show it.
They show it, but they gain full power, right? So I think they mentioned in this article that Hitler, as soon as he had power, as soon as he was Chancellor of Germany, he took, and we'll talk about this very shortly, he took steps to make sure that he had all of the power, right? And so as we'll see, he combines the office of Chancellor and President, and he makes himself, he consolidates his power, right? And so the author is saying that that's one of the things that fascists do. They seize full power when they get a little bit and then they take it all. Did Donald Trump do that?
No.
No, he didn't do that, right? He did not seize full power. What other things, what's the next thing that fascists often do after they've seized power?
They often afterwards
They have, sometimes, yeah, sometimes they'll get into conflicts with other countries, that's true.
purge and jail opponents.
Yes, they'll purge and jail their opponents, right? Any other political parties will be made illegal. They will round up their opponents and throw them in jail, and they will make sure that they're the only, there's no competition, right? They have no one to stand in their way. So they will purge, whoops. They'll purge opponents. Did Trump do that? Did he throw all of his enemies in jail?
No, but I bet he wanted to.
I bet he wanted to. I bet he wanted to so bad he could taste it. But he didn't do it, right? He did not do that thing. Sorry, let me just check my notes. Oh, and yeah, okay, and one more thing. One more thing. One more thing. Had to do with kind of the nature of fascists. What's one of the things that they oppose?
Democracy.
Definitely equality, yes, but also democracy, right? Fascists are anti-democratic, right? They do not like democracy and they will destroy it. But how did Trump come to power?
Democracy.
Democracy, right? And then just, what's it now, 7 or 8 months ago, what did he participate in with Joe Biden?
Democracy.
Democracy, right? They did another election, which of course he lost, but they were part of it. And so the author's saying that, like fascists are anti-democratic, and here, what the Republican Party is doing is participating in democracy, right? They're running their candidate, and he's winning or losing or whatever. But, so Donald Trump, they're saying, is Donald Trump is democratic, right? He ran for the primaries. He got nominated as a candidate for the Republican Party. He ran in the election. He won the election. He ran in another election and happened to lose. But yeah, he's doing democracy. Fascists aren't into that. Fascists are anti-democratic. So he can't be He can't be a fascist if he's doing all this democratic stuff, can he? Okay, so that's good. I think those are our two arguments. Now, let's assess them. So, we have two things that we have to do to make sure an argument is logically sound. What's the first one? Say that again? Yeah. Right. So how do we evaluate these arguments? Right. Do the premises logically support the conclusion? Okay, let's try it out. Donald Trump is a fascist. His policies are fascisty. Is that a reason why he might be a fascist?
Yeah.
Yeah, someone who has fascist policies might be a fascist. Okay. Fascists are bullies, and Donald Trump is a bully. So is that a reason why someone might be a fascist?
It's a 50-50.
Maybe, right? We have to kind of accept the author's comparison of fascists and bullies, right? So fascists like to bully people around. Donald Trump acts like that too. Maybe that makes him a fascist. But if we believe that fascists are bullies and Donald Trump is a bully, is that support for him being a fascist?
If we believe it.
Right. So if we agree that that premise is true, then it's logically supported, right? Okay. So let's give it a pass for now. Fascists undermine democracy, and Donald Trump undermined democracy. So is that a reason why he might be a fascist? Yeah. Okay. Good. So they're all logically supporting. What's the second part that we have to do? Are the premises
True.
Are they true? Is it true that Donald Trump has fascisty policies?
Yeah.
I think so. I kind of think so. Is Donald Trump a bully?
Yeah, for me,
Yes.
yeah.
He's a bully. Are fascists bullies?
Yeah.
Okay. Does that mean that Donald Trump is a fascist?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, right? Because you can be a bully without being a fascist, yes? Right. So bullies and fascists are not exactly the same thing. So is this premise true?
It depends on how you look at it.
Yeah, maybe.
But
Right?
it could be easily argued, so I wouldn't include that in an argument.
No, it's a little weak, right? Because again, you can be a bully without being a fascist, right? We've all met bullies before in our lives, I think, and if you haven't, then you probably are a bully. Just teasing. We've all met bullies in our lives. They're probably not fascists, right? But they are bullies. So this one's maybe so-so, okay? I'm gonna check this one. Oh, I'm gonna use a different color. Woo! Green check mark. Here, I'm gonna put a little purple, maybe. What about this one? Did Donald Trump undermine democracy?
Yes.
Yes. Do fascists undermine democracy?
Yes.
They sure do. Okay, that's good. So, do we have a reasonably good argument here?
Yep.
I think it's pretty good, right? As I say, that second one is a little iffy, maybe, but not bad. Let's have a look at the second one here. So, Donald Trump is not a fascist. Let's look at the first one. Logical support. Is being contained by a democracy a reason why you might not be a fascist?
Not really. Because you can always try to break out of it.
You can always
If
try
you're
to.
a fascist, right?
Yeah, so does the inability to do the things that a fascist does that mean you're not a fascist? If I don't murder anyone, that means I'm not a murderer, right?
Yeah.
But what if I really want to murder someone?
You're a psychopath.
Then I'm a psychopath, right? But not a murderer, because I haven't done it yet, right? And so that's kind of the argument, well, not it's not the argument, but that's kind of an implied premise that this author is saying, right? That if you don't do fascisty things, you're not a fascist, right? On the other hand, if you have a fascist mindset, does that make you a fascist? But again, this author is saying if you don't do a fascisty thing, then you can't be a fascist, right? So here, he's saying, yeah, that Donald Trump was constrained by democracy, right? There's a lot of fascisty things that could have been done, but he didn't do any of those things, right? So, is being constrained by a democracy logical support for believing that he's not a fascist? Okay, let's come back to that one. Because actually that one, I put that down, Jim, but that wasn't on my original list, so I'm not sure what to do with it yet. Number 2, fascists usually seize power. As soon as they get a chance to, they take full power, they take full control of the nation. Did Donald Trump do that? He did not. Now, yeah, this is tricky, right? Maybe we should start with not the logical support, but the truth, right?
Trying to do it.
Let's start with the truth. So, is it true that Donald Trump is contained by democracy?
Yeah.
Absolutely, that is true. Is it true that fascists seize full power?
Yeah.
That's true. Is it true that they purge opponents?
Yeah.
Yes. Is it true that Donald Trump is participating in a democracy?
Yeah.
Yes. Now, is it also true that Donald Trump did not seize full power?
Yeah.
Yes. Is it true that he did not purge his opponents?
Yeah.
That is true. Is it true that he's participating in a democracy?
Yeah.
Right. So, we have premises that are true, but this is a tricky one because there's an implied premise, right? So, it's the difference between this. Is fascism something that you are up here, or is it something that you do? Right?
A bit of both.
Well, this is the distinction that's being made with these two arguments, right? Our first author is saying that Donald Trump is a fascist because look at all the things he is saying and trying to do, right? And his policies feel like fascisty kind of things, right? Look at all these things. His mindset and the things he says tells us a lot about what's going on up there, right? Whereas the second author is saying, yeah, but fascists usually do all of these things. And Donald Trump didn't do any of those. So how can he be a fascist? Right? But again, we have to come to the conclusion about whether we think that fascism is something that you are up here, or does it just matter what you do, right? Similar to being a murderer. Can't be a murderer if you don't murder anyone, right? But is that the same thing? Can you be a fascist without doing the things that fascists do? Especially when you don't really have that much of a choice, right? And that's that first premise that Jim brought up, is that Donald Trump couldn't do a lot of the things he wanted to do, right? And so if he would have gained full power, would he have done a bunch of fascisty things?
He did do that because he don't have this ability. Doesn't mean he don't want to.
Right. So then, yeah, so he probably would have done a bunch of those things had he been able to. And so, what do you think? Is fascism kind of something you think, or is it something that you do?
In this context, it's something you do.
In this context, it's something you do.
Yeah.
So that would mean that you're kind of coming down on the side of the second argument, and that Donald Trump is not a fascist because he didn't do those fascisty things.
Yeah. And with the context of this context, then yeah.
Okay.
But overall, I still feel like he is, personally.
Well, and that's the decision that we have to make, right? Do we have a fascist in the White House, Or do we have to wait until he does all of the things that Hitler or Mussolini did before we know he's a fascist?
I think he is a fascist. Yeah. I mean, like, take your example of murderers and people with the intent to murder, you call them psychopaths. And then usually you send them for counseling and stuff, or immediately lock them up as a precaution.
Yeah.
It's the same analogy here with Donald Trump.
Yeah, and with this, but actually, the movement that he is putting
Yeah, well, he's certainly gone as far as he was able to, right? Again, there was
He did test the limits.
he did test the limits, and he violated the limits in a lot of cases as well, right? Because a lot of the things that he was doing, there's no rules for. It's just that nobody expected a president would ever do something like that. And so he kind of broke an unwritten rule. But yeah. Why doesn't anyone accuse Joe Biden of being a fascist?
They're more saying he is a pedophile.
What's that?
They're more saying he's a pedophile.
Oh yeah, the whole QAnon thing. That's a whole other conspiracy theory. But nobody is accusing Joe Biden of being a fascist, right? So you could make the same argument about Joe Biden as the bottom argument is making, right? You could say that, well, Joe Biden didn't seize full power. He didn't purge all of his opponents. He didn't try to destroy democracy. So Biden's not a fascist either. But why is nobody actually having the conversation? Why is nobody arguing about it? Because of the first argument, right? Because Joe Biden doesn't say fascisty things. Joe Biden isn't a bully. Joe Biden isn't trying to undermine democracy, right? So the very idea, we're actually having this conversation because of the first one, because of the idea that, you know, the things you say and the things you try to do say a lot about the way you feel about things. And again, if we put up the political spectrum, which I won't, but if we put it up, does that political spectrum have to do with what people think or what people do? What people think, right? So I said that personally I was out on the left wing a little bit, but that doesn't have to do with anything that I do. It has to do with what I think, right? What I think about what society should be like, what the role of government should be like, what people should and shouldn't be allowed to do. That's what puts me in a place on the political spectrum. And I think it's what puts fascists on one end and communists on the other, right? Because communists believe in certain things, right? And the same thing with fascists. And so, I don't know. Who do you think has the better argument here? What's that? The second one? I think both of these arguments have a hidden or an implicit premise, okay? Something that they don't say outright, but that structures the whole argument. And I think it's that. So fascism is something you do, or fascism is something you think. And I think it depends what you believe, okay? If you believe that fascism is something you think, that kind of makes the first argument true for you, and the second argument false. Yeah. If you think the other way, then the second argument makes more sense, right? Because those are all true, right? Fascists do these kinds of things. Donald Trump didn't do them. Therefore, he cannot be a fascist, right? He can be an idiot, he can be a jerk, but he can be a bully, but not a fascist. So again, it depends on that belief, right? Whatever you believe, is fascism something you think, Or is it something you do? That's kind of what it comes down to. Okay, that was good. You want to take a little break? Okay, let's take a little break. We'll come back, we'll kind of review that, and then we'll talk about Germany in the 1920s and 30s. All right, and oh, we don't need that clock. And we are back. So we've kind of mapped out two arguments here, right? And one arguing that Donald Trump's a fascist, one that he is not. We have some premises that the authors have provided to us, and we went through and we determined that most of them are kind of true or clearly true, and they're all kind of reasons in which, reasons that you might support one conclusion or the other. But again, there's kind of a hidden premise here, which is tricky, right? Do you believe that fascism is something you do, or is it something that you kind of are up here? Is it something that you think about, right? And so that will change things. And that's something that when we were talking about critical thinking earlier that we didn't discuss, right? Remember when I did the cat argument and I said, what are there, like, why might you reject my argument even if I've made a logically sound argument? And some people said, well, you might, I think Ben, you said you might want, your lifestyle might support a dog better, right?
Yep.
Or that's the kind of lifestyle you want. We said some people might be allergic to cats, and so even if you make a really good argument, well, if you're allergic, you're allergic. What can you do, right? But one of the things we didn't talk about was, is there an implied premise, right? Is there something that you need to believe in order for the rest of the argument to be true, right? So for the bottom one, you kind of need to believe that fascism is something you do. And if you don't do those fascisty things, then you can't be a fascist, right? Never mind the fact that he wasn't even able to, right? But you kind of have to believe that. And for the first one, you kind of have to believe that fascism is a state of mind, right? It's a way you look at the world or a way you think that government should operate. And so if you don't believe that, then the argument kind of falls apart, right? So there's kind of there's a premise here that's a precondition, right? You have to believe that first in order for the rest of the argument to make sense. And I don't know, let's just take a show of hands. I'm curious. So who would say that, and I know it might be tempting to sort of sit in the middle, but no sitting in the middle on this one. Who thinks that Donald Trump is a fascist? Based on what they have read and heard, we should consider him a fascist. Okay. Who would consider him? No, he is not. Not a fascist. Not a fascist? Okay. Now, let me ask you this question. Was your decision to raise your hand for one or the other, did either of these arguments change your perception? Did it change your mind? Or did you believe that going in? Well, I know he will, but did the argument change your mind? Or did you just never think about whether he was a fascist or not?
No, actually, I thought about it.
Yeah?
But this is like true, but like I told you before, the bad things for me, they win.
Yeah.
So that's why they will not.
Yeah, I see that. I understand that. Anything else we should say about Donald Trump as a fascist? I have to admit, I'm glad that Twitter banned him because it's been kind of nice, right? Not hearing his voice all the time. Hasn't it been like, yeah, like I think after the election was over, not after the election was over, but after after Biden took over, it was just like such a breath of fresh air. It was like, oh, now we don't have to listen to him, right? We don't have to it's not like waking up every day and like, oh, what stupid thing did he say today that will make you want to tear your hair out? It's just kind of like, oh, this is what life was like before all of that. I don't know. I'll leave it to you to decide one way or the other what you think. Right. Okay. So let's switch gears a little bit. What have we got? 20 minutes. That's okay. Um, I want to talk about Germany in the 1920s. We talked about the US in the 1920s, and it was the roaring 20s, right? For the most part, wild and crazy, lots of technological innovation, lots of production, lots of social and cultural change and money flying around, lots of parties and drinking, even though booze is illegal, new fashions, pretty exciting time, right? And as I say, if you ever get a chance to go back in time, I'd consider the 1920s. You'd probably have a blast, right? But things are not the same in Germany, right? Germany is having a very different experience of the 1920s, right? So they've just finished with the Treaty of Versailles. They have been screwed over in the Treaty of Versailles, right? They didn't get a chance to negotiate it at all. They have a brand new democratic government. So they used to have a Kaiser, the Kaiser fled, and now there's this new democratic government running Germany. It's called the Weimar Government because that's where the government meets, in the city of Weimar, Germany. So the Weimar government is running Germany and trying to kind of stabilize the situation. But as you'll read about very shortly, the situation is pretty chaotic and not great. So what I'll ask you to do is just read a few pages here. It looks like a lot of pages, but there are some sections that I don't want you to read. So any of the like purple sections in the text, just skip over those, okay? So it looks like a lot, but it's not, because you'll be skipping and just reading the parts of the text on the white background, not the orange or the purple or anything else, okay? I have a few questions for you to answer here, and again, it just describes the state of Germany in the 1920s, okay? So I'll give you some time to just read through that and answer the questions. We'll of course talk about them when you're done, and then we'll have a good grasp on what's happening in Germany at this time, okay? And I'm just going to make sure that I have those pages in Microsoft Teams, because if I don't, I will add them immediately. Do I have them in Microsoft Teams? Is anyone there? Or maybe not. I do not have them there. Okay. 10 seconds here. Okay. Should be there now if you're looking online.
page 49, so
You can't find page 49. Is it not in there?
yeah.
47, 48. Oh, I guess you're going to need 49, aren't you? Oops. Okay. Let me just. Okay, hang on. Because we're just missing the questions then, right, Yo-Ya? Okay. No problem. What I'm going to do. Just going to note those questions here in Microsoft Teams. It's what? Oh, I see. Well, that's strange. Okay. Let me. So it's questions 16 and 17, right? Could somebody who has a book, can you tell me what question 16 is? On page 49. Okay, hang on one second. Okay, and then question 17, if you would please, Sophie.
How did the Americans defend to solve Germany's reparations problem?
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Sophie. Okay, I'm just going to post these in Microsoft Teams here so you can read them. I apologize for missing that page. There. Okay. Thanks for letting me know, Yo-Ya. are we doing there? People need a little more time, or are we ready? What's that, Sophie? A little more? 2 minutes? Okay, 2 minutes it is. Okay, let's talk about a few of these here really quickly. Question 13, that's not really the question I wanted to ask, and so I seem to be having a rough time here with, pages that have been copied twice and questions that don't ask what I want them to ask, and so let's just maybe start with this one. What's the state of Germany following the First World War? What can you tell me? What's going on? What's it like? I can't hear you. I like cats, but I don't have the hearing of one, so like you have to make some noise, Sorry.
That's known for having good hearing.
I think they have pretty good hearing. They can swivel their ears. It's incredible.
They were under a crisis because they couldn't get they weren't on the markets of the other countries.
Yeah, they had trouble selling their products on the market, and why was that?
Kind of shunned out.
They were kind of shunned out, right? Because imagine, like if you're in Britain and you've just been at war with Germany for 4 years, and Germany's been killing your soldiers, are you going to buy German products when you go to the store? No, that's the bad guys. We're not buying German stuff. Are you crazy? Right? So Germany needs to make money on European markets, but lots of people aren't interested in buying German goods or dealing with Germany at all because, again, they're still the bad guys in a lot of people's minds, right? So they're going to have trouble raising funds, right? They're going to have trouble making money because nobody will buy their stuff. What else is going on? There's a treaty. Sophie, what treaty was that?
With the Soviet Union.
Right.
They can get food as well.
Right? So they make a bit of a deal with the brand new Soviet Union, right? The Soviet Union will kind of be born in 1917. So the Germans will make an agreement with them. The Soviets will send them oil and food and other things. And what do the Germans, or what other things are part of that treaty? So it's a trade agreement, but also it's another part of that treaty agreement.
To create like small agent in other countries.
To create a small. Oh, okay. So yeah, there's kind of a sort of a mini trade alliance forming there. But what about the military stuff? What do the Germans get to do?
Not much.
No. Well, according to the treaty, or according to the Treaty of Versailles, but this Treaty of Rapallo lets the Germans do military maneuvers in the Soviet Union, right? Is Germany supposed to be doing that?
Nope.
No, right? The Treaty of Versailles says they're not supposed to have a military, they don't have any tanks, there's no training, there's nothing, right? But the Germans are already secretly training in the Soviet Union because it's outside of the Treaty of Versailles jurisdiction, those sneaky Germans. What else is going on in the 20s in Germany? What else is going on, politically speaking? There's a lot of coups. Yeah, what's a coup? Coup. Oh, what is it?
Like people gathering together to kind of protest something.
Oh. Yeah, it's a little more than protest. It's an overthrow of the government.
On a bigger scale.
Yeah. So they protest so much that they overthrow the government. Yeah, so this new Weimar government, which is a democratic government, is getting overthrown seemingly every other week, right? So the communists managed to overthrow them before the Weimar government takes control back. And then there's these guys on the right wing, and they manage to sort of take control, but then the Weimar government gets rid of them. So there's lots of coups, right? There's lots of unrest. There's lots of martial law. What's martial law? It's martial law. You can Google it if you want. Somebody Google martial law, and then somebody Google Reichstag.
Temporary imposition of direct military control of normal civil functions, or suspension of civil law by the government.
Right. So basically, martial law means the military has taken over, right? They are now in charge, and they are now making the rules, right? And so often you see that dictators will use martial law, but also they'll use martial law in like really extreme emergency situations, right? And so the military will step in to try to restore some order. What's that?
That happened recently, right? Somewhat major.
Martial law?
Like kind of when the military just took over Myanmar, I think.
Yep. Myanmar is under martial law. Belarus might have been a few months ago when there was all those protests happening against Lukashenko. Who else is under martial law? Yeah, Myanmar is probably the most recent example, yeah. So yeah, the military basically takes control and starts organizing things because things have become too chaotic, right? So there's lots of coups and attempted coups. The military is brought in. What's the Reichstag? It's the what? Yeah, it's the German parliament. So that's where the government meets and debates and votes, right? So the Reichstag is the actual government building where that all happens. Oh, and now we are right out of time. Terrible. Nobody's even going to laugh at that joke because it was like the worst joke of all time. I'm not even going to get a pity laugh out of that.
I didn't
There we go. That was very forced. Nicely done. Okay, so that's all for today. Remember, we're having a quiz tomorrow. If you are an online student, we'll start the quiz at 10:05. If you are an in-class student, you'll come in here at 11, okay? So 11 o'clock and you'll write a paper quiz just as you normally would, okay? So online people, I'll start with you at 10:05. In-class people, I'll see you in here at 11 o'clock to start the paper quiz. Cool, cool? As cool as a quiz can be? What's that? 11. Did I say something else?
So, I don't need to go to school.
Nope. You can be here or you can be at home or wherever. Be here at 11. Okay, that is all, people. Have a good afternoon. I'll see you tomorrow.